Logical, positive, teaches genius. Liberalism's biggest lies. In this video, we will be talking about concepts used by liberals that do not mean how liberals define them or how they're used in liberalism. Introduction. What is the issue? What is important? Are we talking about you, the world, or all of creation? We cannot know the question without knowing the answer. What concerns you? What is important to you? What are you conscious of? What are you aware of? What is significant to you? For liberals, nothing is important because regardless of your point of origin or path, you are going to end up in the same place. For liberals, there's no reason to be concerned about what you study or focus on. In the end, you are destined for success. No one on the left is permitted to fail, because to fail is an indictment on all of creation. Even God is blamed by the left if someone goes to bed hungry, not man. The single most important issue is security. If our persons and belongings and ideas are not secure, no other issue has relevance. If others are permitted to take what we produce, how can we begin anything with the expectation that we can complete our work? Our society reveres democracy, but if democracy does not protect our property, we are voting for our favorite thief. However, the security issue is still something of a side issue. The question we ought to ask, but seemingly never do, is if we are natural persons with natural rights, or if we are legal persons created by the state. If we have no natural identity and no natural rights, then as artificial creations produced and owned by the state, how can we even entertain the idea we ought to have rights above and beyond what the state is willing to give? Genius. All progress is created by one person standing up and telling the world they are wrong. It is not that hard to discover the world is wrong in many things. The hard part is getting other people to listen and believe. Teaching genius is not about teaching people to think differently. To some degree, this is natural. While we all agree, generally, no agreement is absolute. For the most part, the agreements and disagreements are insignificant, for they have no impact on anything of importance. For example, we have favorite music, bands, colors, styles, and so on. None of it matters much and does not impact anyone but those involved in predicting and catering to our preferences. Genius is not learned, and it is not innate. It is the ability to create value for others. If what you do does not matter, you do not matter. Value is not natural, it is not innate. Value has one source and one source only. That is the human mind. We create value. We produce equity. We produce it from the assets given to us by God. Equity is the value added to the things of God, that is, the natural world. We do not own the world, we own the equity we create. Genius is nothing more than the capacity to produce equity from assets. In other words, genius is working with God, not against God. Freedom. Liberalism is said to be an ideology that promotes freedom, but the only freedom there is freedom from lies and falsehoods. Liberals free us from nature, from our natural selves, or try to. Liberals seek freedom from the limitations of natural identity. Natural man is limited by his and her natural identity. Natural man is limited by truth, that is, by our way of thinking and reasoning. We are limited by logic, because truth cannot defeat, overcome, or contradict or be inconsistent with logic. The paradox is that if we free our minds of truth, all we have left is emotion. Liberalism is a process that frees emotion by overcoming the spirit, the seat of the mind. The process of freeing emotion is grounded in the ego and the ascendancy of ethos through pathos in a rejection of logos. Natural man is overcome by the lies of liberalism. Liberals want man to believe we can overcome nature. True science reveals nature, it does not overcome it. Science creates equity. Equity creation requires man to work with God, not against God. Secularism. Atheist and secularist seek after wealth and power. What they are after is legitimacy for their emotions. Secularists manifest ethos in pathos. Wealth gives secularists power over things. Power gives liberals the ability to enshrine opinion into law and a system of jurisprudence. This is pathos. There is no logic or objectivity in the secular worldview. There is only opinion, justified by emotion and the level of importance the atheist attaches to his or her beliefs. BLM, Black Lives Matter, is opinion lifted up to the level of doctrine. The right to abort living beings is another opinion with no logic or reason behind it. Secularists, however, are physical creatures with emotion, emotion expressed as opinion, and opinion becomes law. Naturalism. Words are the vehicles of our concepts. Words are units of information. Without concepts and the words that communicate them, we are as beasts. Satan is called the author of confusion for good reason. The natural war is a concerted attack on language by liberals. The objective is to destroy our ability to communicate. Sentient beings need words to communicate with one another. Words must convey an accurate image of the concept represented. The image must be encrypted in symbolic form, and the encryption must be transmitted without noise, randomizing the signal. The transmission must be decrypted at the other end by the receiver. If the symbology becomes corrupted by noise, or the concept rendered imprecise by false data, the ability to communicate, analyze, and reason is seriously hindered. Liberals endeavor to destroy our ability to communicate. Liberals are keen to destroy our language so as to destroy our ability to think and reason. Liberalism. Liberalism is a pervasive idea based on the value of freedom. Freedom from what is not specified, but liberals frequently appear to want freedom from moral boundaries. The words looked at in this video are all ideas distorted by liberals. Freedom is a great idea, but many embrace it. But freedom is not a first order principle. Freedom cannot outrank or overshadow other values. However, liberals would like us to believe that all limitations and restrictions are inherently evil. For a liberal to be free, he can start off from any point and take any path and still end up at the desired location, desired destination. A freedom that results in costs others pay does not allow freedom for the one stuck with the bill. The only possible freedom there is freedom from the cost one creates. Liberal freedom is the freedom of a freeloader. Cost must always be a limitation one, on what one does. That is the point of costs. Without costs, there can be no right choices. Socialism. Socialism is a close cousin, conceptually speaking, to liberalism. Socialists believe in the right of governments to address social issues by redistributing wealth in a conscious, planned, and ideological manner. Socialists are driven by a social agenda founded on a vision of equality that justify the means used. Socialists view democracy and capitalism as failed ideologies that require a conscious and systematic effort to readdress the systemic failures of these systems. Socialists are strong in their support of an interventionist and regulatory powerful state. Not only does this suggest that there is something inherently missing in our institutions, but that to fix them we need ad hoc and piecemeal measures driven by a regulatory framework that sees some as victims and others as the oppressor. Socialists believe only some humans have the innate ability and moral legitimacy to physically force one group or other group to fund the needs of another. Socialism legitimizes the tyranny of a small group of agenda-driven persons who claim moral superiority over those whom they rule. Unless we are willing to agree tyranny is morally justified in some situations, socialism is inherently flawed. While it may be excused as a lesser of two evils, it is not possible to declare it positive. That is, socialism is not profitable, it is not equitable, it does not create equity. Democracy. Of all of our institutions, democracy is probably the most idealized and least understood. Democracy originated as an oligarch of powerful landowners who had the leisure to participate in what was primarily a debating club. Its purpose was to organize the affairs of the polity, to maintain the status quo, and so it continues. Democracy is more about legitimizing the tyranny of the majority than it is about expressing equality or justifies. Otherwise, such things as the Electoral College and writings would not need to be created to defeat the power of the masses. The will of the people is not represented by a vote. The idea is obscene. Will must be expressed through a free market. The will of man is expressed in and through equity. A person who bakes a pie does not share it by permitting the clients of a pub to vote on who gets what. If you work and do not ask a group to vote on how to spend what you have earned, you are not a real believer in democracy. Currency. Hard currency is currency fashioned out of assets. Currency is a thing owned by someone, distributed as a medium of exchange. Capital-based currency is able to work for its owner because it has market value above and beyond its service as a medium of exchange. This is good for the rich, not good for the poor. Hard currency is not good for those with equity. The use of a product as a medium of exchange creates the absurdity of the medium of exchange being used to purchase itself. The demand for the commodity as a medium of exchange puts upward pressure on its value. This is akin to using bubblegum as a measuring stick. The use of asset-based currency distorts the unit of measure. It benefits the rich more to hoard gold or other asset being used as a medium of exchange than risk it by investing it. Some say investing currency in financial vehicles is making money work for you. The process of investing is more about exploiting a weakness of the asset-based currency than it is about creating more and greater equity. Money. Real money is not fashioned out of assets. Real money is equity. Another name for money is preferred shares. Preferred shares represent equity created by the generation of real value. When a business creates new products or services, or it creates new capital, equity is produced. The equity is represented by an issue of preferred shares. Preferred shares represent the equity in the business. Preferred shares can be issued in multiples of itself, that is, in the same denominations used for domestic currency. Preferred shares, or prefers as we can call them, create a stable and secure local currency that is able to allow for economic development and free markets that permit social goods to be provided by the private sector. By social goods, we are talking about roads, schools, hospitals, defense, and so on. These can all be produced by market mechanisms using prefers. The church. The church as we know it, in the form that we're familiar with, is a lie fostered upon Christians. The church is an illusion created by liberals. It is a product of the liberal state. Constantine's conversion did not put the state under the aegis of the church. Constantine put the church under the jurisdictional and legitimizing authority of the state. Constantine brought Christianity into the fold of secular institutions. If Constantine had been a real believer, he could not have been an autocrat. The Church is a body of believers whose characteristics is mutual accountability. Accountability requires political and economic equality. The Church cannot exist with power disparities between its members. Therefore, the Church, as part of the political life of a state, is not compatible with the Church as a body of believers accountable to one another. Equiton. This is a model community, and it's been created, at least in conceptual form, to demonstrate the characteristics of a biblical church. So, an equiton, or model community, has a public sector agents that are not permitted to bill private sector accounts. The public sector cannot bill the private sector for its costs. Imposing costs onto society and future generations is not permitted. The future is not an account in the ledger of the state. That is, meaning the same thing. The state cannot push its costs onto future generations. The sale price cannot be lower than the item's current liability. All costs must be contained in the price of the product. A sale liquidates all associated liabilities. There cannot be any externalized costs. Ownership is determined by authorship. Those who create equity own the equity. Money is a currency backed by equity. Volunteers, housewives, and students own the equity they create, as do all people. Alienation of workers from the equity they create is a criminal offense. Private and public partnerships are fictions of the state. The principle of subsidiarity defines the level of authority. No level No authority can be exercised by a higher level that has not been given to it by the lower level. Equity pertains to levels of accountability. Specialization is the source of all progress. Justice is restorative, not punitive. Wants are insufficient to define a victim. We aren't a victim because we did not get what we want. Social justice warriors are not agents of jurisprudence. We do not take power into our own hands. The power to bill anyone for anything is inherently fascism. Positivism requires accountability. All claims must be validated in a quantifiable and verifiable manner.